I walked into the club knowing I did not belong there. My dress was plain. My shoes were worn. The light at the entrance caught every flaw, and I felt it before anyone spoke. People turned to look at me, then looked away like I was nothing. I held the small brown envelope tight against my chest, the paper already soft from my sweaty palms. The bouncer frowned the moment he saw me. His eyes moved from my face to my shoes, then back to my face again. He laughed and asked who I thought I was. I told him I had a message to deliver. He laughed louder and said this place was not for messengers like me. Behind him, music thumped and rich voices floated out. Inside, people wore confidence like perfume. I stood there, small and shaking, remembering my mother's last words. She had pressed the envelope into my hand and told me this night would change my life. The bouncer stepped aside, still laughing, as if letting me in would be entertainment. As I crossed the doorway, I felt every eye judge me. I was a mistake walking into a perfect room. I did not know yet that before the night ended, the room would bow. Inside the club, everything felt too bright and too loud. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling like frozen stars. Music rolled through the floor into my feet. People laughed without fear, without care. They held glasses that cost more than my monthly rent. I stood still, unsure where to go. A woman in a shining dress brushed past me and wrinkled her nose. A man bumped my shoulder and did not apologize. I heard whispers. I felt fingers pointing. I felt my face burn. I moved toward a corner, hoping to disappear. A waiter stopped me and asked who invited me. I told him I was there to deliver something. He smiled in a way that was not kind and told me to move away from the tables.
I
scanned the room, searching for the man my mother spoke of. She had never described his face, only his power. She said everyone would know him, even if he said nothing. Then I saw him. He sat at the center, calm and still. Others leaned toward him, laughing too hard, listening closely. He barely moved. His presence felt heavy, like the air changed around him. My hand shook harder. That envelope was meant for him. I just had to reach him. I did not know how many walls stood between us. I took one step forward, then another. Each step felt like walking through deep water. A man blocked my path and asked if I was lost. His smile was sharp. I said I needed to deliver something. He laughed and called over his friends. They looked me up and down, slowly, like I was a joke. One of them said people like me did not walk into places like this by accident. Another said security should do their job better. A guard approached, tall and serious.
Please, I need to
He
get
asked
in.
for my invitation.
Back of the line, miss.
I told
But
him
I'm on
I
the
had
list.
none.
Check again.
I showed
can't
him
do
the
that.
envelope. He barely glanced at it. He said I had 5 seconds to leave. My throat tightened. I tried to speak, but the words fell over each other. I said my mother sent me. I said it was important. He reached for my arm. That was when I felt it. A deep pull in my chest. A quiet voice from memory telling me not to let go. I held the envelope higher. The seal was old, marked by a symbol pressed into wax. I did not know what it meant, but my mother had told me never to open it. The guard hesitated, just for a second. That second kept me inside. The guard released my arm, but warned me not to move further. People nearby watched closely now. Some looked annoyed. Some looked amused. I felt like a small animal trapped in a bright cage. I stood there, holding the envelope, my heart beating fast. Every sound felt louder. The music felt heavier. I wondered if my mother had made a mistake. I wondered if I was foolish to believe her. A woman nearby laughed and said I was clearly begging for attention. Another man asked if this was part of the entertainment. I felt my eyes sting, but I refused to cry. I remembered the nights my mother stayed quiet, staring at nothing. I remembered how she worked until her hands cracked. I remembered her telling me that truth had a way of standing up when the time was right. Across the room, the powerful man lifted his glass. His eyes moved slowly, scanning the crowd. I felt them land on me, just for a breath. He did not react. He did not smile. He did not frown, but he looked again. I did not know it then, but that second look was the moment the night turned. The guard returned, this time with another man. They spoke in low voices, glancing at me like I was a problem that refused to solve itself. The second man told me to follow them. I asked if I could speak to the owner. He laughed and said the owner did not speak to people like me. They led me toward the exit. My chest felt tight. The music grew distant. People stepped aside to watch me leave. I held the envelope tighter. My fingers hurt. As we reached the edge of the room, Someone shouted behind us. A sharp voice asked what was happening. The guards stopped. The room seemed to quiet just a little. The powerful man had stood up. He did not rush. He did not raise his voice. He simply stood, and the energy shifted. Conversations died. Glasses lowered. Music faded until silence filled the space. He walked toward us, his eyes fixed on the envelope in my hands. I felt small, but I did not look away. He stopped in front of me and stared at the seal. His face changed. Color drained from it. His glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. He whispered my mother's name, and in that moment, I was no longer invisible. The room froze. No one spoke. No one moved. I could hear my own breathing, fast and uneven. The powerful man reached out, then stopped himself, like he was afraid the envelope might vanish. He asked where I got it. His voice was low, shaking. I told him my mother gave it to me before she died. I told him she said this night would come. He closed his eyes for a moment, then straightened his back. He told the guards to step away. They obeyed instantly. People stared in confusion. Whispers spread like fire. I felt every eye on me, but this time, it was different. He took the envelope carefully, like it was fragile. He did not open it yet. He asked me to sit. A chair was brought. I sat, my legs weak. He finally broke the seal. His hands trembled as he read. His face tightened. His jaw clenched. When he finished, he looked at me with something I had never seen before. Respect. He turned to the room and told them the club would close for the night. Gasps filled the air. No one argued. He said some truths were not meant for crowds, but the damage was already done. Everyone knew something powerful had shifted. The staff moved quickly, guiding guests toward the exit. Some protested. Some begged to stay. None succeeded. I sat still, watching faces pass me that once looked through me. The powerful man sat across from me. He asked me questions gently. He asked about my mother, my childhood, my life. I answered honestly, my voice soft but steady. He listened like every word mattered. He told me my mother had disappeared many years ago, that he had searched for her. He said she had saved his life once, then vanished with a truth he could never erase. He said the letter confirmed what he had always feared and hoped. I was connected to him by blood. The room felt smaller. My ears rang. I thought I misunderstood. He repeated it slowly. My mother had hidden me to protect me. He said enemies watched him closely. He said power always collected shadows. He said my life, simple as it was, had been a shield. I felt anger rise. Fear followed. Then confusion. I thought of my small room. My quiet life. My struggles. He told me I was never a nobody. I just lived in the wrong light. When the club finally emptied, silence settled like dust. The powerful man stood and offered his hand. I hesitated, then took it. His grip was warm and steady. He told me the world would change for me now. I told him I was afraid. He nodded and said fear was honest. We talked until morning. He explained the past carefully, piece by piece. My mother had loved him, but trusted no one around him. When she learned she was pregnant, she left to keep me safe. He never stopped searching. I asked why he never found us. He said my mother was stronger than he knew. As dawn light crept through the windows, I felt tired, but awake in a new way. The life I knew felt far away, like a story someone else lived. He promised protection, not control. He promised truth, not comfort. He said the choice of who I became would always be mine. I believed him. When I left the club, the city looked different. The air felt sharper. People moved like nothing had changed, but I had. I walked in as a nobody. I walked out carrying a truth that could shake cities. The days that followed were heavy. News spread quietly at first, then louder. People asked questions. Strangers watched me too closely. I stayed indoors, guarded but restless. The powerful man visited often. He never rushed me. He answered every question I asked, even the hard ones. Trust grew slowly, like morning light. I learned about the world he lived in. Deals, threats, alliances. I learned why my mother ran. I learned how easily kindness could be used as a weapon. I also learned about myself. I learned I was stronger than I thought. I learned my silence had always been a form of survival. One night, I asked if he regretted finding me. He shook his head and said truth always hurt before it healed. I thought of the club again. The laughter. The looks. The moment he stood. That moment had not just changed my life. It had exposed everyone in that room. Some apologized later. Some avoided me forever. I did not chase either. Power had found me, but I would decide how it stayed. Weeks later, I returned to the club. Not as a guest, but as myself. The lights were the same. The music still loud. But the air felt different. People noticed me immediately. They whispered, not with laughter, but caution. Respect mixed with fear. I walked through the same entrance, wearing simple clothes. I did not change myself to fit the room. The staff greeted me politely. No one questioned my presence. I stood where I once trembled and felt calm. The powerful man watched from a distance. He smiled, not with pride, but relief. I understood then what my mother had done. She gave me a choice. A chance to enter the world, knowing who I was, not who they wanted me to be. That night taught me something important. Some doors only open when truth knocks. And when it does, even billionaires stand. Life did not change in one loud moment. It changed in small, quiet ways that felt heavier. I stopped walking alone. Cars followed me sometimes. People I did not know smiled too much. Others stared like they were counting my steps. The powerful man warned me not everyone would be happy. He said power was like light. It revealed faces clearly, even the ones hiding behind kindness. I thought about my mother often. I understood her fear now. I understood why she chose a small life over a loud one. One afternoon, I saw a woman from the club across the street. She had laughed at me that night. When our eyes met, she looked away quickly. That was when I realized something important. The room had not only judged me, it had exposed itself. People were afraid because they had been seen. I asked the powerful man what he wanted from me. He said nothing. He said my life was mine. But he also said running forever was not living. That night, I made a choice. I would not hide. I would not rush. I would learn. The world had opened a door. I would step through it slowly. Training came quietly. I learned how meetings worked. I learned how silence could speak louder than words. I learned how people tested limits with smiles. I listened more than I talked. That made people uncomfortable. They expected anger or pride. I gave them calm. Sometimes I returned to my old neighborhood. Nothing had changed there. That grounded me. I remembered who I was before the lights and whispers. The powerful man never pushed me forward. He stood behind me instead. That mattered. One night, news broke about a deal collapsing. People blamed him. Rumors spread fast. I watched carefully. I saw who stayed loyal and who vanished. That was when I realized why I mattered. I was not just his past. I was his truth. Enemies could fight power. They struggled against honesty. I remembered the envelope again. A small thing that carried a storm. I promised myself something then. If I was going to stand in this world, I would stand clean. No lies. No borrowed courage. Only truth, steady and sharp. The club reopened weeks later. This time, my name was on the guest list. I almost did not go. Fear still lived in me, but I remembered the girl at the door that night. The one holding an envelope with shaking hands. I went for her. When I entered, the room reacted before I did anything. Conversations slowed. Heads turned. I felt the shift again, but I did not feed it. I walked calmly. I did not search for approval. Some people smiled too hard. Some avoided my eyes. A few looked ashamed. The powerful man watched from a distance. He did not interrupt. This was my test. A woman approached me and apologized. Her voice shook. I accepted it without celebration. Power was not about winning moments. It was about choosing which ones mattered. Later, I stood where I had almost been dragged out. I felt steady. That night taught me something deeper. Respect given by fear fades. Respect earned by truth stays. I left early. I had nothing left to prove. Pressure grew after that night. Invitations arrived. Interviews were requested. People wanted stories. They wanted drama. I refused most of it. The powerful man warned me again. He said attention could trap faster than silence. I listened. Then a threat came. Quiet, careful, meant to scare. I did not panic. I had lived small. I knew how to survive without noise. Instead of hiding, I prepared. I learned security. I learned law. I learned how systems broke and how they healed. Fear still came at night, but it no longer owned me. One evening, I asked him if my mother would be proud. He paused before answering. Then he said she already was. That was enough. I stopped seeing myself as a secret. I saw myself as a bridge between two worlds. the girl with nothing. The woman with choice. The club was only the beginning. The standing up was only a signal. The real work had just begun. I returned to the club one last time that year. Not for attention. For closure. I stood at the entrance and watched others arrive. Some confident, some nervous, some pretending. I smiled softly. I understood now how power truly worked. It was not money or rooms or names. It was knowing who you were when no one bowed. Inside, the music played. Life moved. I walked through without weight on my chest. The powerful man joined me briefly. He did not lead. He walked beside me. That mattered more than anything else. As I left, I looked back once. Not at the lights. Not at the people. At the door. That was where everything began. I entered as a nobody. I did not leave as someone else. I left as myself, and that was the greatest power of all. After that year, people stopped calling me a surprise. They called me a presence. I noticed the change in how rooms reacted when I entered. Conversations paused, then resumed more carefully. I did not rush into the life everyone expected. I still woke early. I still liked quiet mornings. I still remembered what it meant to count coins before buying food. The powerful man respected that. He never tried to shape me into his image. He only offered guidance when I asked. One day, he invited me to sit in a meeting. I listened while important people spoke around me. They argued politely, but their eyes kept drifting toward me. I realized then that truth made people uneasy. They did not know my limits. They did not know my silence. After the meeting, one man approached me and asked what I wanted. I told him I wanted fairness. He laughed nervously. Fairness frightened them more than power. That night, I wrote in my journal about my mother. I thanked her for choosing love over comfort. I thanked her for teaching me strength without noise. I slept peacefully. Not everyone accepted me. Some tested me openly. Rumors appeared, carefully planted. Lies dressed as concern. I learned to recognize patterns. Fear often hid behind smiles. Greed hid behind praise. When one story reached the news, I felt anger rise. It painted me as ungrateful, ambitious, dangerous. I wanted to speak. I wanted to defend myself. The powerful man stopped me gently. He said storms passed faster when you did not chase them. So I waited. Within days, the story collapsed under its own weight. The people behind it were exposed. Apologies came quietly. I learned something important then. Truth does not need shouting. It needs time. Later that week, I visited my mother's grave. I told her everything. I laughed and cried in the same breath. I promised her I would never forget where I came from. Power had found me, yes. But humility would keep me whole. As I left, the wind moved softly through the trees. I felt like she heard me. The city began to change around me. Not because I demanded it, but because people adjusted. Programs started. Rules shifted. Voices once ignored grew louder. I stayed close to the work. I visited places like the one I grew up in. I listened more than I spoke. Some people cried when they told their stories. Some were angry. I welcomed both. The powerful man watched with quiet pride. He never claimed credit. He said this was always how it should have been. One evening, we stood on a balcony overlooking the city. Lights stretched far into the distance. He asked me if I felt ready. Ready for what? I asked. He said ready to be seen fully. I thought about the club again. About the girl at the door. About the envelope. I said yes. Not because I felt fearless, but because I felt grounded. Fear did not disappear. It just stopped leading. That night, I understood something clearly. I was not living a borrowed life. I was building my own. Public attention returned, but this time it felt different. I spoke carefully. I chose my words slowly. I refused to perform. People listened. Some still doubted me. That was fine. Doubt kept me sharp. One interview asked what changed my life. I did not mention money. I did not mention names. I said truth stood up for me when I could not. That line traveled far. Letters arrived from people who felt unseen. I read everyone. Some thanked me for showing them that quiet people mattered. That humbled me more than applause ever could. The powerful man reminded me to rest. He said even strong roots needed water. I took time away. I walked alone. I remembered simplicity. When I returned, I felt clear. I no longer measured myself by rooms or reactions. I measured myself by peace, and I had it. On the anniversary of that night, I stood outside the club again. I did not go in. I did not need to. I watched others line up, nervous and hopeful. I saw myself in some of them. I smiled gently. That door had been my test, not my destination. The powerful man joined me. We stood side by side, saying nothing. Words were no longer needed. I thanked him for standing that night. He shook his head and said I had already been standing. He just followed. That stayed with me. As I walked away, I felt no pull to look back. The city moved on. So did I entered that club as a nobody? But the truth is, I was never empty. I was only unseen. And when truth finally stood up, the world had no choice but to notice. Life settled into a rhythm I never expected. It was not loud or dramatic. It was steady. I learned that real change often came quietly, without applause. I spent more time listening than speaking. In rooms filled with strong voices, I noticed who interrupted and who waited. I chose to wait. That alone shifted power. Some people tried to remind me of where I came from, as if it were shameful. I corrected them gently. My past was not a stain. It was my foundation. One evening, I sat alone and reread my mother's letter. I noticed lines I had missed before. She had written about trust, about timing, about letting truth speak when the noise faded. I understood her fully then. She never wanted me to be powerful. She wanted me to be free. That realization brought peace. I stopped proving myself. I stopped explaining myself. Those who mattered stayed. Those who didn't drifted away. And for the first time, I felt like my life belonged completely to me. A challenge came when I least expected it. A public decision needed my voice. People waited to see what I would do. Fear visited me that night. I let it sit. I did not chase it away. Fear reminded me to be careful. The next day, I spoke simply. I chose fairness over favor. I chose people over image. Not everyone was pleased, but the reaction surprised me. Support came from places I never imagined. Quiet people stood taller. Others followed. I realized leadership was not about commanding attention. It was about earning trust. Later, the powerful man told me he had never been prouder. I smiled, but his approval no longer defined me. I had crossed that line already. I thought of the club again. Of the laughter. Of the glass shattering. That night had cracked more than silence. It had cracked illusion. And once broken, illusion never fully heals. Time softened the sharp edges of my story. People spoke of it less as gossip and more as lesson. I used that space wisely. I built quietly. I helped where I could without cameras or praise. Some nights, I still dreamed of the door, the bouncer's face, the envelope in my hands. But the dreams no longer shook me. They reminded me. One afternoon, a young woman stopped me on the street. She said she saw herself in my story. She said she felt brave for the first time. That moment mattered more than any headline. I realized then that stories did not belong to us forever. They moved forward, touching others. My mother's choice had reached beyond me. So had that night. I carried that responsibility carefully, not as weight, but as purpose. I visited my mother again before the year ended. I told her how far the story had gone. I thanked her for trusting the future. The wind moved softly. I felt calm. I understood now that standing up did not always mean rising above others. Sometimes it meant standing firm within yourself. I no longer chased rooms that once rejected me. I built rooms where others felt seen. That was the real reversal. The powerful man and I spoke less about the past and more about tomorrow. Our connection felt honest and balanced. Nothing needed proving. As I walked away from the grave, I smiled. I was no longer walking alone. Looking back, I see the truth clearly now. That night was never about a club. It was about recognition. I entered as a nobody because the world had not learned how to look properly. When truth stood up, it corrected their vision. I did not become someone new. I became visible. That is the part people often miss. Power did not change me. Truth revealed me. And once revealed, I chose who I would be. I carry that choice every day. Quiet, steady, unshaken. That is how the story ends. And how my life truly began.